All right.
Welcome into the install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. There is always interesting stuff to talk about with Greg, but it's been a pretty interesting news week in the league this year, and it's not even got anything to do with the NFL necessarily. It's Bill Belichick, Greg, being announced as the next North Carolina Tar Heels head coach. And I'm just going to sit back and let you react to that. I'm sure you've talked about it among friends and colleagues, and I know he's been in the NFL Films building, doing the
He's here
show
every week.
the
He's
show
here
for the
every week.
CW. So I
Yeah.
know that that's probably been an interesting thing for you to be able to take in and watch as well. But that's so shocking to me for a number of different reasons, Greg. And I wonder just what you make of it.
Just to show you, maybe I'm probably not the first thing many thought of, but one of the first things I thought of was, so you're a 17-year-old high school kid, and Bill Belichick shows up at your door to recruit you. I mean, that's
It's crazy.
that's
It's
yeah, that's got
crazy.
to be a little bit interesting. Um, the other thing I immediately thought of too was his staff. I'm so anxious to see who his staff is going to be. Um, because the college landscape has changed dramatically. The portal just opened on Monday. It goes until December 28th, and over 1,500 kids already have gone into the portal. I'm sure there'll be significantly more. And it's the wild, wild west right now. I mean, there's really no structure, no rules, regulations. So I was thinking, are kids going to think I have a chance to play for Bill Belichick, or are they not? I don't know the answer to that. Because obviously you make a hire like that at North Carolina, you're not looking to downsize your program. You're looking to move into so you can be in the top 12 next year and be in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
So, so I'm so anxious to see, you know, because clearly there's a ton of NFL coaches who don't have jobs now who, if they want to get back in, could well be on his staff. And then, he could have an all-star staff relative to what the college game normally presents.
Yeah, and to your point about what they are trying to build at North Carolina. I mean, my alma mater, Greg, Indiana, just did this overnight, and I know Kurt Cignetti has been in college
Right.
football for a long, long time, but this wasn't something that he built up himself. He used all the situations that are, it's kind of a perfect storm right now in college football with name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal, and all these different things that allow a situation like Tennessee, for example, to get up off the mat after being a historically great program in college football. They've used this to their advantage. Indiana doing the same, but this is a completely different thing. This is
Yeah.
arguably the greatest head coach in the history of pro football.
Yeah. I mean, to use the NFL term, which doesn't apply exactly, but you know what I'm saying. You can go from worst to first in college football now a lot quicker than you used to be able to do that. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, your alma mater, my daughter's alma mater, IU. They got the quarterback in the portal. I don't know if they knew he'd be this good, but he turned out to be that good this
Right.
year. I'm sure there are many others. I don't follow every player on the IU roster, but the point is that so many of these schools, even the top schools, the Oregons, I mean, they get. I think Oregon's whole secondary was transfers.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that, but I think that's true from what I heard. So you can go from worst to first pretty quickly, and I'm sure that's what North Carolina is thinking. I certainly don't know about their endowments and what kind of money they have available, but it's not a small school, and it's not as if I'm sure they do have, good sized donors there.
Yeah, no, it's just to put a bow on this. Jonathan Jones from CBS reported that it's the collective spending allotment is going to be somewhere in the ballpark of 20 million, which is in the conversation as Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas this year, based on
Here you go.
what the
So I mean,
reporting
they're
is.
like I said, they're not doing this to say, oh, we're going to rebuild next year and we're okay going 5-7. That's not the way they're thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it's going to be fascinating. I'm looking forward to
Yep.
his press conference at some point. I don't know how North Carolina media is going to handle Bill Belichick, but it seems like it's just it's a cool thing for a coach who we all expected to just jump right back into the mix, given how close he is to the all-time wins record. But uh,
And the other interesting thing about it is it's basically a college basketball area. I mean, that triangle is a college basketball area more than a football area.
yeah, no question about that. And so how that dynamic shifts with the presence of Bill Belichick is something that I think we're all looking forward to
No,
seeing.
it's gonna. It's a lot of fun. It should be fun, I'm looking forward to it.
Either way, it is going to be an interesting story. It's Dion with a manifesto a little bit,
Right, right,
it
right, right,
sounds
right.
like, but there will be plenty of time to talk about that, I'm sure, as the weeks and months go on. In the meantime, Greg, I would like to just talk briefly about Will Levis. Titans have a terrible outing against the Jacksonville Jags, red zone offense in particular,
Yeah.
biggest issue that they had. And Will Levis been a talking point this week for some of the opportunities that he missed, and also because it sounds like he re-aggravated that shoulder injury.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is he not going to go this week?
We don't know that for sure. He didn't seem like he had limitations yesterday when we talked to him at practice. But there's no question that he is feeling worse right now than he was in the previous weeks because I'm sure you saw that play with 1 second left to go in the half where they drop
Yeah,
it
yeah.
back and he just gets smoked.
Just a couple of points. I thought it was really interesting when I watched the tape that they ran the ball on their first 8 offensive plays, and three of the runs coming out of 6-0 line personnel, which clearly was game plan. They did that, throughout their first couple of possessions. And the first throw of the game was basically a no-read tunnel screen to Ridley. But yeah, I think then a couple of other points that I think that to me the whole thing was, that first and goal from the 4-yard line where they didn't score. Now, one can debate whether, they should have kicked the field goal. That's debatable. I don't get into that. But it, Levis clearly missed on that misdirection play, which was a really well designed, well called play where they had Chig wide open and he threw it to Vinette, and only he could tell you. I don't know if he addressed it. I know Callahan probably did, but I don't know if Will Levis addressed it. But he just, for whatever reason, didn't see it. I don't know why. I mean, that was the play.
Yeah, what he said in the post-game press conference with us, Greg, and I'll just read directly from it. He said that Vinette was the first person that he saw. He just let it go. He quote he flashed talking about Vinette. I thought he had a step on the defender. If I would have continued on, I would have seen Chig. But yeah, it sucks to see somebody that wide open after you release the ball.
Yeah, so again, I personally think that the play was designed for Chig. I don't know, what Callahan said, but I just think he didn't read it right for whatever reason. And again, one can start debating the play calls because obviously they'd been running the ball really well. The first play was a 2-yard run at a 6-0 line personnel, and they gained 2 yards. And then on second down, they threw. One can debate, and I don't get into this. I'm not making a judgment right or
Yeah.
wrong, but they'd run the ball pretty well. And, now you're at second and goal from the 2, and you've obviously made the decision that it's 4 down territory. The only thing I would say, and it's no knock because they know these things better than I'm not in their meetings. I was surprised. That's all I would say. I was surprised they didn't run it on second and 2.
We all very much were, and you don't worry, the sports talk radio vultures like me, Greg, are here to second guess and instead of asking you to do it. But that play in particular, Jeff Simmons obviously on the field on that play.
Yep.
He went out and ran a route. Callahan told us that Jeff is the first read there and Chig is the second read, based on what Will Levis was supposed to see, and instead he saw Vanette and let it go.
Yeah, and then there's two other things I noticed, and just to throw out, is number one, Latham is still bothering me, and obviously I liked him a lot, as did the Titans, and he may end up being a really really good player, but I think he's continued to be highly inconsistent on one-on-one pass protection. Too many snaps where he loses his technique with a tendency to bend at the waist, and that gives up the edge. I think that happens a few too many times in each game. I'm sure Bill Callahan's working with him on that because he has the physical and athletic traits to be good, clearly. But when you see guys starting to bend at the waist in response to contact, that's a technique issue more than an athletic issue. So that just needs to be worked through. But he's past the point where you can call a guy a rookie. He's played a lot of games now with a lot of snaps. So we'll see how they view him as we continue. Look, he played right tackle in college. I don't know if they'll see him as their left tackle going forward. It's possible they could say, hey, maybe he's better at right tackle. Maybe he's more comfortable. I don't know the answer to that, nor am I suggesting that that's going to happen because I certainly don't know.
Sure.
The other thing that struck me, and I would say overall, and I've noticed that at times throughout the season, and it just makes things tougher for Will Levis. Is I think the receivers at times struggle to separate versus man coverage. And I think, Levis is not at the stage of his career. He's only started, what, 19 games, something like that.
Yep.
Um, he's not really ready where he's just going to turn it loose. Like he's not at that point. He's got to feel like, man, this throw's there. And I think, Ridley's obviously the best guy, but there were even some times I've seen throughout this year where he struggled a bit. Now, he obviously won big on that 30-yarder to start that possession, then ended with the fourth down incompletion, which to me was another play where Levis needed to make that throw. That he threw it with a little too much air and he threw it too far inside. That needed to be a touchdown and a completion and a touchdown because Westbrook Heaney was open.
Yeah.
He won on that route. But I think their wide receivers as a whole are struggling to get open, and that's just making it harder on Levis.
Yeah, just quickly to go back to JC. Actually, Greg, I'd like to go back to what you said about the six offensive lineman looks that they've been using because I've seen that more, and you'll tell me if I'm mischaracterizing, but I've seen that a lot more from Buffalo this year.
Buffalo leads the league by a wide margin in the use of six offensive linemen.
But they're getting explosive plays out of those looks too, Greg. And I wonder if you could speak to the idea of what coaches try and set up when they've got personnel groupings, but they want to run multiple different looks out of it. That's kind of an ideal situation if you're an offensive coach, no?
Yeah, but I think what you're saying is that our big guys are going to block your big guys because obviously when you go 6-0 linemen, you're going to get the other team's base defense. They're going to put bigger guys out there. They're not going to play nickel to 6-0 linemen. So, you're just saying that, hey, the way we structure our run game is our big guys are going to block your big guys. Now, you can throw off that too. The Bills do that.
Yeah.
You know, the thing about playing with six offensive linemen because you're losing essentially an eligible receiver because I mean, is he technically eligible? Sure, but he's not a receiver.
Unless he's
Is
Penei Sewell, I don't want him catching passes.
right. Is you can do that if you have a mobile quarterback because you can lose an eligible receiver and go to four true eligibles if your quarterback then, if something isn't open, if he then has the ability to make something happen. The Seahawks did that a lot with Russell Wilson. Obviously, the look at the Ravens with Lamar. Now, Ricard is not an O lineman, but he's essentially an O lineman. I mean, so you can do that if your quarterback could then take off and run, because that adds that element where that losing that eligible receiver isn't as extreme as if you do it with a pure drop back quarterback who needs five eligibles. If you're going to throw it, I mean. If you're just going to run it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And then on the Latham situation, that you bring up something at least that they'll have to consider, right? The idea of a right tackle because they do desperately need to reset the board on the right side of that offensive
Without
line.
question.
They have a variety of different issues that need to be addressed this offseason, as we all knew was going to be the case. There was no way that they could accomplish everything that they set out to do last year. But that is something that is at least worth keeping an eye on as
There's
we get
there's
ready
a
for
lot
this
to
draft.
address on the offensive side. That's the thing. Because let's assume for the moment that Levis is the quarterback. Okay, let's assume that for the moment. And I go back and forth on him when I watch tape. Sometimes I really feel like, man, this guy, there's something there, and other times I'm not certain. But even if you feel that there's something there, and I'm sure they have their opinions, they may have made a decision already, but we don't know that, and we're not going to know that. We're not going to know that till the draft, probably. But the kind of quarterback that he is he needs a complete offense. He's a pocket quarterback who needs to be protected. He needs a run game, so therefore he needs a good O-line. He needs receivers who can win. So there's a lot that they have to address. You hit it right on the head. They need the right side of the O-line at guard and tackle. That needs to be better. Now, my guess is they're going to need two new players there. That's got to be better. I think they have to address the receiving core. Ridley's going to be here. He's good. I would assume NWI might not be here. I don't think anybody's going to sign him and think he's, going to be my number two and pay him a ton of money. But my guess is he'll be gone because he's a free agent, right?
He can get $5 to $6 million somewhere, and I don't think it's going to be here.
Right. So that's going to happen.
Yeah,
And Boyd has turned out, and maybe he's at the end of his career. That's hard to know. I'm not watching every single route he runs, but he certainly has not been a big factor in their offense. And he's on a 1-year deal, correct?
correct.
I would doubt he'd be back.
Yeah.
So Would you say that's pretty fair at this point?
I would say that's a very, very accurate estimation.
Okay. So they're going to need a revamped O-line and they're going to need receivers. I think they're fine in the backfield. Pollard is a really nice player. Spears will continue to get better as a complementary piece. That doesn't have to be addressed. But, so if you have all those things, then you have to decide, can Levis play? I lean toward the yes, but it's not like a hard yes. I'm not like he's the guy for sure. But
Yeah.
I think he could, but that's what he needs. If he doesn't have that, you're going to see the kind of inconsistency we see now.
Well, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about this in the offseason, Greg, and obviously we'll do the live show after the
Right.
draft. But
I'm
they,
really looking forward to that one this
oh
year.
no, sir,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
God knows we're going to have a lot to talk about. But
Yeah.
I think that in particular, regardless of whether it is Levis, and our expectation here locally is that they'll bring in somebody to at minimum compete with him.
Right. But the point is, I don't think they'll, again, do I have any inside information? Of course I don't. I'd be very surprised if they took a quarterback in the top five.
We are very much in agreement there, and just based on talking to people in the building right now, that is not their preferred. That is not their preferred
Yeah.
strategy based on who's available at the top of the draft at this point in time. Regardless of whomever plays quarterback for them in the present or in the future, they need a better roster around it, and that's what this off season is going to try and accomplish because they could use some pass rush help too, but we're not going to touch on that
Yeah.
today.
No, this is a little bit of a rebuilding phase. This is, although, we've seen teams make meaningful jumps, but I mean, the point is they need some things.
Agreed.
But the quarterback they're playing this week, though, is pretty good.
He's excellent. He is quite excellent, and I hate it for him that his defense has had such an up and
Ah,
down season because that quarterback deserves so much better, Greg. But that's just my personal feeling on it. I mean, if he was on a winning football team, he would absolutely be in the conversation with Josh Allen for league MVP. There's no disputing that, and the connection that he and Jamar Chase have had, it's always been great. But you tell me, Greg, is this not the best version of Joe Burrow that we've ever seen?
I mean, yeah, I mean, he's really good. Again, that's always hard to know because I loved him coming out, and I think that he's played in the NFL the way he played in college.
Yeah,
There's a poise to him, there's a confidence, there's an ease to it, the way in which he plays. And the one thing, just to bring it a little bit to matchup, the one thing he and Chase are phenomenal at, and this is going to put the burden on the corners on the outside, and I know Uze played this week, is they work outside the numbers as well or better. The two of them, I'm talking about Burrow and Chase, as
mm,
well as better than any quarterback receiver combination in the league. And when you're outside the numbers, even if you're in a zone concept, you're essentially matching up. So that's tough duty right there.
yeah. You don't. Brian Callahan said it yesterday. Obviously, the former Bengals offensive coordinator. You don't really stop it. You just find as many different ways to try and contain everything else around it, and understand that
And
you're
and,
going
and
to
I
get
think
beat.
I think one of the things that Burrow's so good at, obviously we see guys like Josh Allen, who's a freak of nature, run for 20 yards in critical situations. But I'm not sure there's a better quarterback, and that includes Mahomes, who's obviously great, but just a better quarterback in kind of navigating the space in the pocket area, and even when he gets outside of it a little bit. But I'm not talking about running, than Burrow. I mean, I just recall a play from the other night. I think he threw it to Yoshevich for, I don't know, 20 yards on third down, and the way he kind of stepped, moved around, stepped up, and there's a comfort to the way he does that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it looks like nothing's hurried with him,
yeah.
and
No,
yeah. Go
I
ahead.
talked to Jeff Simmons about what we've talked about a lot
Yeah,
with quarterbacks specifically, and Burrow being excellent at the way that he just maneuvers inside
yeah.
the pocket. Jeff used a word that is not FCC safe to talk about it, but
Right, right, right.
just said, you know what, we got to do the best that we can because he's looking at those A gaps a lot for his opportunities as well. I mean, the guy is he's just difficult to game plan for.
Yeah, and when guys play with that kind of ease, that just means that they see it and it's innate. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not obviously studies, I'm sure. My guess is he works his tail off, but there's just an innate feel for the game because it just nothing looks fast or hurried with the way he plays.
Yeah, it's I'm looking forward to seeing them both. It's the Titans and Bengals have played a fair amount here in the
Yeah.
last
And
couple of
that
years.
game's is that at home this week?
That is a home game. We are here in
All right.
Nashville for that one before they go on the road for Jacksonville here in a couple of weeks. NFL matchup show, of course, gets you ready, as you well know, for each and every week of the NFL season. It's just crazy. Even in a bad season, Greg, it feels like we get to the end of the season so very quickly,
I
and
know.
already week 15. There are fun games all over the place, especially in the later afternoon slate on Sunday and into the primetime games on Sunday and Monday night. But what do you want people to hone in on for this week's matchup show? Because I'm looking at this Bills Lions game, Steelers
Yeah.
Eagles, Bucks Chargers is fascinating.
They're in all in the show. We're doing full segments on the Bills, Lions, and Steelers, Eagles, and of course, Bucks, Chargers is in the show. Colts, Broncos is a very big AFC game, as is Bucks, Chargers. As far as the Chargers, but
Yeah,
Bucks are in first place.
yeah.
And the other really big NFC game, which probably is not, or big for one of the teams, probably both teams actually, not big in Nashville, I'm sure, but Packers, Seahawks is a really big game this week.
Yeah, no, I'm curious to see. It's so crazy that the Packers are a third place team with 9 wins on the season, and that was as fun a Thursday night game between them and the Lions. I know we previewed
Ah,
that last week, but just to see those two quarterbacks going back and forth was really
and I
really
think I
enjoyable.
think there's two Monday night games this week too.
We are out of buys, so the two Monday night games are Bears at the Vikings and Falcons at the Raiders.
I mean, how about Sam Darnold? I mean, one could argue he's in the MVP conversation.
Greg, I don't know how you don't. I hit there. What they do this offseason is going to be fascinating because obviously McCarthy
Fascinating.
is there, but I don't know that it's just such a cut and dry decision that you let somebody else pay Sam Darnold this year.
Look, we don't know the answer to that, but Darnold's going to command a lot of money. And
Yeah,
how do again, we don't know how the playoffs will play out because they'll be in the playoffs. But let's say they win a playoff game. We don't, who knows? But they're good. They're likely to get a home playoff game to start.
right.
So let's say they win a playoff game, and even if they lose in the next round, are you letting Sam Darnold walk out the door?
I don't know that you can do it in good conscience, but that's
Yeah.
Kevin O'Connell's decision to make.
Well,
And
no, it's probably not going to be his decision. He'll have a
right,
lot of say, but then it becomes the owner's decision because someone's going to pay him. Look, Baker Mayfield got a 3-year deal at whatever that number was. It's, good number. My guess is Darnold would probably be, in that range or more. I mean, you know,
so I just and these things are projections, so they're not
right, right.
they're not hard numbers. But Spotrac, for example, has Sam Darnold projected somewhere in the ballpark of $34 million a year. So that would be
He's a
and
quarterback.
that's quarterback money at this
Yeah,
point.
he's a
That's
quarterback.
that's what it is. So we will
But
see what Minnesota
that's
ends up
that's
doing.
that's going to be a fascinating thing in the offseason, Darnold situation.
Well, and I don't know if you know Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus, Greg, but he's a buddy of mine. He had a pretty interesting dialogue about the Titans and the Vikings and potentially trading McCarthy in a pick to Tennessee to try and reset the board for them as well. Because obviously, we talked about the draft situation for Tennessee. It's probably not going to be viable to pick one of these quarterbacks this year.
No, and again, who knows, again, that all becomes a function of how the Titans see Will Levis
Sure.
because we'll see. But it's gonna be a fun off season, but we're not quite there yet. Although I'm sure a lot of fans in Nashville might be thinking that way now, but I'm not. I can't do that right now.
Greg, I'm fighting them off tooth and nail to get to not talk about draft for 4 more weeks because I've got actual football games to cover. But
Right, right, right.
I understand the impulse. I really
Well, at
do.
least hey, when do the Vols play in the what
They've got the
in
Saturday night game at Columbus,
so is
and
that a week from Saturday?
that's a week from Saturday. And I'm actually going to be in Bloomington, Indiana. Indiana is at Notre Dame for their first round game. But the Titans just happen to play at the Colts that weekend, so I'm going to get to stop through Bloomington and take that game in on Friday night.
Oh, good for you. Good for
Yeah,
you.
I'm looking forward to that. My sister's a senior there right now, so
Ah,
she's looking forward to it. They've never mattered this way in my lifetime, but that's going to be a great game for the state of Indiana for sure.
without question, without question.
All right, buddy. We appreciate the insights as always. Enjoy the Week 15 slate. We'll do it again on next Thursday.
All right, Buck. Thanks so much.